somewhere to go. Won't you lay your troubles down and stay with me? Don't you ever leave. Lay down, Sally, and rest you in my arms. Don't you think you want someone to talk to? Lay down, Sally, don't need to leave so soon. I've been trying all night long just to talk to you. Sunny nearly on the rise, still got the moon and stars above. Underneath the velvet sky, love is all that matters. Won't you stay with me? And don't you ever leave. Lay down, Sally, and rest you in my arms. Don't you think you want someone to talk to? Lay down, Sally, don't need to leave so soon. I've been trying all night long just to talk to you. I love to see the morning light coloring your face so dreamy. Know you've got somewhere to go. Won't you lay your troubles down and stay with me? Don't you ever leave. Lay down, Sally, rest you in my arms. Don't you think you want someone to talk to? Lay down, Sally, don't need to leave so soon. I've been trying all night long just to talk to you.
Ripon Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
The captain has turned on the seatbelt sign.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Art Bell Archives live show. I'm your host, AJ, the Ripon Rabbit. Give yourselves a round of applause for being smart enough to be here. Tonight, we dive down the rabbit hole into the subject of anti-gravity. Technology that's here and now, as well as perhaps extraterrestrial technology. The rabbit hole is deep on this one and connects in many phenomenal ways, as you're about to hear. Tonight, buckle up your seatbelts, because we're floating off the ground and bringing this Art Bell subject up to date. Today, as a matter of fact, Sunday, December 8th, 2019. Now, anti-gravity was a subject that Art had numerous times embraced. In fact, in May of 2005, he had a very interesting guest, Nick Cook, who shared an in-depth conversation about anti-gravity and uncovered some secrets and things that he had learned through his research as a defense journalist. Quite incredible stuff, as a matter of fact. So let's introduce you to Nick and hear his own words on exactly how anti-gravity could be coming to a driveway near you.
We're going to talk about superconductors and anti-gravity experiments conducted by someone called Eugene Podkletnov, a Russian, and Ning Li, Chinese-American. I had the good fortune to meet them both, and I'm going to tell the stories of what happened to both of them, because they're actually very interesting and curious. In 1996, the Daily Telegraph in London published a story about Eugene Podkletnov. Podkletnov was working at the University of Tampere in Finland, and he claimed he had managed to negate the force of gravity by 3%, 3 to 5% actually. It doesn't sound much, but actually it's a tremendous amount when you consider that the force of gravity, according to physics, shouldn't be negated by anything. But he said that he'd negated the force of gravity by using superconductors. Superconductors are materials that lose all resistance to electricity at low temperatures. There are some high temperature superconductors as well. And what Podkletnov found, he claimed by accident, was that if you placed an object in a beam above the superconductor, which sort of rotates like if you imagine it like a vinyl disc, if you place an object in that beam above it, what happens is that object loses weight by 3 to 5%. Again, science says that's impossible. Anyway, he went forward, NASA became interested, NASA set up a concepts office to look at this, and they were going to go ahead and test it. Cue to somebody called Ning Li. Ning Li, as I said, Chinese-American. She was working at the University of Huntsville in Alabama. And she also claimed that she had developed a similar system using superconductors that negated the force of gravity. So NASA is going to step in. Actually, Ning Li does get some US government money to go test this. And then some rather strange things start to happen. Now, in the Hunt for Zero Point, I talk about my meeting with Podkletnov, He not only claimed when I met him that he had negated the force of gravity, but that he had developed something called an impulse gravity generator, which was like a kind of force field, a beam that he could shoot out into space, and which would be capable, when weaponized, of knocking down satellites. And the beauty of this as a weapon was that the person or the object struck by this weapon system would never actually know what had hit them. So it was the ultimate kind of stealthy weapon system. Now, you'd think that someone who developed something like this, and he claimed that these experiments had been going on inside Russia, would have got no end of people beating a path to their door to sign them up, get them money, get this stuff developed. And I'm going to come back in a second to what happened when Boeing tried to beat a path to Podkletnov's door. But let's just go back to what happened with Ning Li. So Ning Li makes some progress in America under NASA supervision. Shortly after the publication of The Hunt for Zero Point, which was in, the American version was in 2002, Ning Li disappears off the face of the earth. In fact, as far as I'm aware, right now, no one knows where she is. The speculation is that she succeeded in developing this anti-gravity system, and she was either spirited into the American black world and somewhere, maybe out in the desert someplace, has developed a propulsion beam or a weapon system for the US Air Force or some branch of the US military.
Now, we did our research here on Ning Li because we wanted to see this series of papers that she co-authored with fellow university physicist Douglas Torr that was published between 1991 and 1993. She did claim a practical way to produce anti-gravity effects. And she claimed that an anti-gravity effect could be produced by rotating ions. Li is reported to have left the University of Alabama in 1999 to found the company AC Gravity LLC. AC Gravity was awarded a grant for $448,970 in 2001 to continue anti-gravity research. This is from the U.S. Department of Defense. The grant period ended, however, in 2002, but no results from her research were ever made public. And although no evidence actually exists that the company ever performed any other work, as of 2014, AC Gravity still remains listed as an existent business.
Or she went back to her native China. Multiple people have tried to get in touch with her since 2003, which is around about the time frame she disappeared, and they have failed to do so, as far as I'm aware. I had the good fortune to meet Ning Li after the publication of The Hunt for Zero Point in 2003 at a conference in Washington, D.C. called the High Frequency Gravity Wave Conference. And she was an utterly charming woman who was totally dedicated to producing gravity-free energy for all. She didn't want it weaponized. She didn't want it bought by governments who would then suborn the technology for their own purposes. She wanted to give it as a gift to the people of the world. So where did she go? Now I'm going to cut to the Boeing story. In 2002, at around the time of the publication of the US edition of The Hunt for Zero Point, I came into possession of a set of documents. They were literally posted through my office door anonymously in a brown envelope. And when I opened it up, it was an internal briefing memorandum from Boeing. And it was called GRASP. And GRASP stood for Gravity Reduction for Advanced Space Propulsion. And basically, what this memo was saying was that Boeing was going to spend about $100,000 of internal money testing the Eugene Podkletnov anti-gravity device. We published this in Jane's Defence Weekly. There was a huge hoo-ha. Boeing denied the story, said that it wasn't working on anti-gravity or anything like it. But of course I had the documents which said that they were looking at doing this. So it was a little bit disingenuous because they were looking to do this experiment and they were going to spend money on it. And I even had the name of the program manager, who was a guy called Jamie Childress, who was going to be in charge of this. Cut to a year later, when I was at an event at which I met Jamie Childress, and he advanced towards me looking slightly pissed off, saying, "You're the guy who got me my program cut." Well, cut a long story short, we had a drink or two. Everything was fine. He calmed down and said, "Look, it wasn't your fault." But when that story came out in Jane's Defence Weekly, all the funding that had been allocated to this experiment and all the hoo-ha surrounding it meant that it was never ever going to get covered. So we sort of shook hands and went on our way. So that really is kind of the story of these mysterious superconductors and what happened after the hunt for 0 point. The two leading players, as I say, Podkletnov and Ning Li, I talked to them. I have no doubt in my mind that Ning Li was a very serious player and her disappearance remains mysterious. And if anyone knows where she is, in fact, if Ning Li happens to see this, I would love to hear from her again. She signed actually a theoretical paper that she had written on her work, on the whole use of superconducting magnets and how to negate gravity. And it was a really beautiful inscription that she put on the bottom of it, which was, "I want to make this device work for all mankind." And I hope that wherever she is, she's achieved that, and to hear from her. But as I say, if anyone knows of where she is, I'd be delighted to hear from you too.
Ning Li, if you're out there, or if you're somebody who knows Ning Li, please send us an email at ripinrabbithole@gmail.com. So superconductivity in the realm of anti-gravity is a very real thing. And there clearly is interest from the Department of Defense to issue a grant this large for this type of research. But Ning Li isn't the only one experimenting or inventing anti-gravity. In fact, Alexander Weigers actually has the U.S. patent.
During his hunt into Weigers' life, Randy discovered something extraordinary. Hand-drawn designs for an exotic aircraft dating back to the 1920s. Alex appeared to have invented the very first flying saucer.
That was an amazing find in itself. When I saw the blueprints, it was undeniable that he was the creator.
Weigers called his futuristic flying machine the Discopter. Designed to take off vertically and float on a cushion of air, it was a unique concept, and one he thought cities of the future would make full use of. Weigers patented the Discopter in 1944, and then tried to sell it. He starts sending all of these letters to all kinds of companies, telling them about his invention. As word of the Discopter began to spread, Alex felt the U.S. military stole the idea. It was an accusation they denied. But for Weigers, evidence of the theft was there for all to see, as images of his flying saucer seeped into popular culture, influencing everything from architecture to cars and movies.
A two-seater, ready soon, may be the car or chopper of the future.
There's this whole flurry of stories. Weigers, first with saucer. Dutchman says he designed flying saucer 23 years ago. The man who invented the flying disc. He didn't really seem to be after compensation as much as recognition that he'd done something important and wanted a bit of credit for it.
Alexander Weigers did indeed patent the UFO, or the anti-gravity machine. We've added a link to that patent. You can see it for yourself in tonight's show notes at the bottom, listed below. So there is, without a doubt, that anti-gravity has been something that's been sought after for many, many years. Now, recently, There's been some interesting studies into what they call the gravity wheel.
It becomes as light as a feather when it's rising.
It certainly doesn't become as light as a feather. I can say that too from having felt it.
Now, the anti-gravity wheel, I've also linked in the show notes, and you're going to want to look at the study of how this spinning, remarkably fast spinning object just appears to float. It's a very heavy spinning weight. And as you'll see in that demonstration, it literally does become anti-gravity. Now, the concept behind this gyroscope version of anti-gravity is very, very interesting. And as you're about to hear, this is being taught at MIT by Professor Walter Lewin, a very different version of the same application with a bike tire wheel.
Suppose I have here a string, a rope, like we have there. And I stick into that rope, I attach to the rope this wheel, just like so.
What he's done is attached a wheel to a rope that's hanging and suspended from the ceiling.
And I let it go. Well, we all know it will happen. Clunk. It's clear. All right. But now I'm going to spin it before I let it go. Where's the wheel? The wheel is here. So we'll spin it up, and then we'll put it in here.
What Professor Lewin is doing now is taking that bike tire and spinning it on a grinder to really get the RPMs moving fast.
Notice the way I'm spinning it. I'm holding it away from you now. I'm going to change it and do it differently next. And there it goes. About 10 seconds. Isn't that amazing? And it rotates seen from below clockwise.
And unlike before, the wheel is now suspended on the rope, perpendicular, and spinning, almost as if it were completely weightless.
Now it's going this way, and I'm going to redo the experiment, changing the direction of rotation, and then it will go the other way around. And now the angular momentum, is it rotating like this, is pointing here. Spin angular momentum is pointing like this. Torque is like this. And so the spin angular momentum is chasing that torque. I'm the spin angular momentum, I'm the torque. This is the torque. It's chasing it. All right, so I had this in my right hand. That's all right. And now I will, so when I spin it up, so let it first go around, which was roughly 10 seconds, what we calculated. And now I'm going to put 2 kilograms here at the end. And then you will see an instantaneous increase in the precession frequency. You see it goes much faster now. I take it off, and then it goes back to its roughly 10 seconds. So what I have done is, I have increased its torque, but not at the expense of M. Because the reason why the M cancels is because the moment of inertia has an M in it. But if I just hang this object on it, that doesn't change the moment of inertia of the spinning wheel.
So anti-gravity also becomes weightless. And in Bremen, Germany's anti-gravity machine has created a drop tower. It's a long tower that's long enough to see the strange things that happen when matter is freed from the pull of the Earth.
Tower is 146 meters high. Inside of this concrete tower, there is a steel tube with an elevation of about 110 meters, and we drop the experiments from 110 meters to the ground. This takes about 4.5 seconds, so this is actually the experiment time. If we have experiments that need longer times, we are now able not only to drop the capsule from the tip of the tower, but to throw it upwards from the lower end of the tower and use the length of the tower twice during the way up and its fall back to the ground. If you would be inside of the capsule, you would not feel the capsule to become slower at the end and turning and accelerating again, because without any acceleration, you would feel microgravity until the deceleration starts. So the reason for a drop tower is to achieve microgravity conditions on ground within the gravitational field of Earth. So now we are underneath the drop tower. What we see here is the catapult machine. We have to accelerate the experiments within the capsules with a mass of up to 500 kilograms within a very short time. So therefore we need a very strong catapult accelerating with about 30 times the Earth's gravitation to 170 kilometers within 0.2 seconds. So this is happening very rapidly. So this is the control room of the drop tower. So we call it our tiny little Houston control. What we see are different images from inside of the drop tube. Down left, we see a view from the tip of the tower, from the top of the tower, down to the deceleration area. Mm-hmm. And actually in the center, you can see the drop capsule of today, which is on the catapult post and is not already charged. So within the next minutes, it will be pulled down to the launch position.
I see.
And at the lower end, you see the edge of the deceleration container. So when the capsule is on its way up to the top of the tower and falling back, this deceleration container is released and will swing underneath the tube and catch the capsule. Okay. Experiment might happen within the next few seconds. You see that the operator is pushing a button, opening the window for the experimenter to initiate the experiment whenever ready. That's always a rather exciting moment, even though everything is then done within seconds. Now you see it going. Container moves. Capsule is falling back, hitting the container. Everything was fine. So we saw the capsule coming out of the hole, of the catapult hole. Capsule, that's always very exciting because the diameter of the capsule is almost the same as the hole where it comes out, so it's a very narrow gap. And then we saw it running to the top of the tower, and it's approaching the upper end for about 1 or 1.5 meters, so it's going very closely to the real end, and then turning back.
And in this case, we saw this collection of tiny particles that the camera was videoing, and then as soon as the experiment was launched, they were all moving around. Yeah. And it's that movement that they'll be analysing, I suppose.
You should ask the experimenter how they evaluate it. I don't know how to evaluate that. Rather chaotic, but maybe it wasn't.
So they were doing it years ago. They're doing it now. From Germany to MIT, anti-gravity is being discovered, researched, identified, and there's a whole host of anti-gravity experiments taking place on YouTube, which is quite honestly where some of the greatest research is coming from. And as we are approaching 2020, I can't help but wonder, where is the Back to Future hoverboard? Wasn't it Back to the Future 2 by the year 2015, that kids were already riding around on hoverboards? Well, I can tell you, I dreamt for that day. And as we get into the second segment on anti-gravity tonight, you're going to find out that hoverboard is now a reality. It really does exist. Now, beyond all of the hoaxes and the several people and deceptions that tried to show that the anti-gravity hoverboard from Back to the Future was here ever since that movie came out, is well known and well documented, and there's some really good, funny pranks. But I'm going to tell you, the hoverboard is real, folks, and the money behind who's producing it may shock you. Sunday night, December what? December 8th. Anti-gravity is real, folks. Add that to your Christmas list. The hoverboard. It's coming up in the second segment. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more anti-gravity in just a few moments. Right here on Rippin' Rabbit Hole.
You're listening to Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
That's right, where we take you well into the midnight hour with our special Art Bell Archives show happening tonight and every night this weekend, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Tune in as we open up the Art Bell Archives and dive into the lost classics of a vocal treasure. We take a look at those stories and we bring them up to date and we share them with you. We ask for your input and your shout-outs, your call-ins, as we go through the most amazing stories ever told. Tune in tonight and every night as we reinvestigate the Art Bell Archives live.
The Art Bell Archive Show, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, rippincommonssense.com.
I love the discussion of anti-gravity. Give yourselves a round of applause for being smart enough to be here. We'll be back to that topic in just a few moments. But first, we're here every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get those notifications when we go live, and come spend some time with us and join us down these rabbit holes of bizarre conversations. Things like the Mandela effect, reverse speech, shadow people, anti-gravity, time travel. The rabbit holes go deep, and they all seem to be connected. Last week, our friends at Heron Elite so graciously gave away one of their new origami lamps. This is a brand new limited product that is available from Heron Elite, and in the show notes tonight you'll find a link to their website and to this amazing lamp. It's really beautiful, and last week we ended up giving one away, and Heron Elite has decided to do another one for Christmas. Here's how you can get your very own origami lamp from Heron Elite. It'll come to you before Christmas. Shipping will be taken care of for you, thanks to our friends at Heron Elite. And here's what you do to win. Send us an email with a picture of where exactly you would use this light. Where would you set it if this light were in your home? So click on the show notes. Go take a look at what the light is. Very, very cool. Take a picture of where you would put it and send it to rippinrabbithole@gmail.com. That's RIPON rabbithole@gmail.com. We're going to look at those pictures together with our friends at Heron Elite, and they're going to choose one of you to fill that space with an amazing origami lamp created by Robert Lang. Check it out. Take your picture, send it in, and you could be the recipient of the second Heron Elite origami lamp given away here at Rippin' Rabbit Hole. That's right, everyone has an opportunity and a chance to enter. Just take that photo and send it to rippinrabbithole@gmail.com. We will allow you to do this one time. You can take one picture and only send one photo of where it would go. I'm excited to see your pictures as anti-gravity continues into the evening. Now, we told you about all sorts of wacky experiments, wacky inventions, patents even, on the concept of anti-gravity devices or machines. But as you're going to learn here in the second segment of tonight's program, it's very real. Hoverboards, superconductivity, this kind of anti-gravity research has led up to a period of time in 2019 where anti-gravity is right on the horizon. But could it be extraterrestrial technology?
In 1936, an unidentified flying object crashed in Germany's Black Forest. Wingless, disc-like, and stronger than any man-made competition, it confounded all scientific analysis. Elite physicists from the SS Technical Branch were tasked with recreating the mystery aircraft. In 1939, the Haunebu disc was born. The Thule Society was rumored to have a secret base in the Antarctic, and this is where the Haunebu disc was developed. Surprisingly, this notion isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. It was rumored that these capabilities were guided by higher knowledge supplied by ancient aliens. Contemporary media reports suggested that the aliens were working with the Nazis at the base, building liquid propellant rockets, anti-gravity discs, and stealth aircraft. With supersonic capabilities, the Haunebu was the world's first flying saucer. Jan van Helsing writes that scientists used psychic information from the Thule Society to create an aircraft that could travel at speeds of up to 12,000 kilometers an hour. During the Second World War, Air Force pilots spotted unidentified flying objects on numerous occasions. Reports described them as spinning balls of fire that followed fighter jets but never attacked. British Royal Air Force veteran Andrew Amrose wrote that when tracked, these aircraft would radically change speed or disappear, making them impossible to follow. Allied pilots called them Foo Fighters.
Now, another man that spent a lot of time on the Art Bell show was a man by the name of Robert Lazar. Robert Lazar, of course, claimed that he was from Area 51, where he was part of a team that was reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology for the purpose of anti-gravity. Here's Bob Lazar explaining how it works.
Gravity is something difficult to explain because it's something that we essentially don't understand. It's just something that we can observe. Not much is really known about gravity. There are many theories about it, but they are just mainly theories. There's theories of gravitons, which allege that there are these subatomic particles that act like an attractive force like gravity that exchange between two pieces of matter. There is also a theory that gravity is a form of wave, an electromagnetic wave. Basically, gravity is a force. It's the inherent property of matter to have gravity, a mutual attraction for each other. Modern science, current science right now, identifies one gravity. It's one force in nature. Apparently, through research at S4 or information gained from one of the crafts they were researching there, it appears that there are two different forms of gravity. One form works on an atomic scale, on subatomic particles, holding pieces of matter, holding atoms themselves together. Another works on a larger scale, the scale we're most familiar with, holding planets in orbit, holding ourselves to the ground, things of that sort. Because it produces a gravitational field, I wouldn't say the craft is invisible during the day. However, if you're under the craft, because of the way the gravity is being used, gravity bends time and space, and it bends light. If you are looking underneath the craft or from certain vantage points, you will actually see what's above the craft. It's really a trick of the way light bends under the influence of gravity. For instance, we can see stars that are behind the sun, that are blocked from our view by the sun. The reason we can see them is because the sun is a tremendous gravitational field, and it's bending the light around it where we can see the star. Space-time and gravity are all essentially interrelated. They all act on one another. Gravity bends space. Gravity also distorts time. When you vary one, you essentially vary the other two. As an example, if you have a massive body, say a planet or something that's making a lot of gravity, producing a lot of gravitational waves, if you will, it distorts space. It bends space to it. It also slows down time.
It also slows down time. Very interesting to think that we live in a world where these things are being experimented with today. Ha! And not just today. They've been experimented for so long that this subject has many, many people that have devoted thoughts to anti-gravity. We've heard through Professor Simon Holland that Sandy Kidd has completed his gyroscope anti-gravity machine. Let's listen to the letter from Sandy Kidd to Professor Simon.
I got this wonderful letter actually from Sandy Kidd, the inventor of the gyroscope anti-gravity machine. Let me read it, and then we'll watch the second part of Sandy's film about building the gyro and his contact with Eric Laithwaite. Dear Professor Simon, about 35 years ago, I had an idea that offered to deliver vertical, non-Newtonian thrust. If I could somehow rotate a pair of opposed but equal weights at an angle above the horizontal. At the time, I knew this was impossible, but I never lost touch with the idea. Several years later, while watching Eric Laithwaite's lectures on TV, I realized that under certain conditions, I could make the weights do the impossible and raise themselves to a position above the horizontal. I built a new device, and it's capable of demonstrating all of my claims. The device is comprehensively fitted out with rotation speed telemetry sensors, one for each of the two gyroscopes and one for the machine rotation. It is fitted with 4 strain gauges on the vertical swinging arms to demonstrate the loss of angular momentum as the rotation speed of the gyroscopes are increased, the outputs being fed through a slip ring to the outside of the device. I can let you have photographs of my new device. Best wishes, Sandy Kidd. How wonderful. I'd love to see it, Sandy.
I think we're all going to begin to see it very, very soon, as anti-gravity in 2020 must become reality. It's bound to. And like I said, here in 2019, the hoverboard has made it. And guess who's behind it? Was that long enough to guess? It's Lexus. Okay? So parked in your driveway next Christmas could possibly be a hoverboard. Now, wait a second.
So for like the last 2 decades, we've been teased with the existence of functional hoverboards. Back to the Future Part 2 gave us a glimpse of what a hoverboard may look like in the year 2015. Director Robert Zemeckis further fueled our imaginations by claiming that they used real hoverboards in the film, and that the only thing stopping these things from being mass-produced was concerned parent groups. But that's not true at all. They didn't exist. Last year, Funny or Die trolled the internet with Christopher Lloyd, Tony Hawk, and random celebrities riding a fake hoverboard called the Hover, which they swore up and down was true, and that was also not real. So when Lexus released its first hoverboard teaser earlier this summer, I, along with the rest of the internet, was super skeptical. It looked so real, but Lexus, out of all companies? And then we were invited to see the thing in person. The whole thing felt a little bit weird. In a beach town about 45 minutes away from Barcelona, Lexus built an entire skate park, or hover park, if you will, that acted as a set for its commercial. And yeah, this park was built just for the hoverboard, which does exactly what you think. It hovers off the ground like a proper hoverboard, but as I'm sure you've guessed, there are some big caveats, like the track it needs to run on, which is crucial to how the thing works at all. Inside the board are rows of superconductors. A special property of these Type 2 superconductors is that when they're cooled down to a critical temperature, they exhibit properties that alter and manipulate any magnetic field around them. Therefore, the board must be ridden above a highly engineered track that's carefully embedded with magnets, strong enough to hold the board and a rider. Normally, the track is hidden under the hover park. The board must be resting upon a portion of that same track when being cooled with liquid nitrogen, which essentially programs it to levitate at a certain height. After this process is complete, the board can be brought over to the park and will hover above the track at roughly the same height, about 4 centimeters. This technology isn't actually that new. It's a process called flux pinning, and we've seen people do some fun things with this on a small scale before. But now that it's been applied to a hoverboard, what's that actually like to ride? It's hard. It's not as easy as riding a skateboard where all 4 wheels are on the ground. The magnetic track in the ground lines up vertically with the center of the board, so it's kind of like you're on a tightrope. And if your balance isn't perfectly distributed on this thing, you end up scraping the ground with the undersides of the board. It took me like 15 minutes just to glide a few feet. So yeah, no shot I was going to ride around the park like Marty McFly did in Back to the Future Part 2. Luckily though, I had the chance to speak with pro skater Ross McGurran, the guy featured in the commercial. So you've been skating for 15, 20 years, you said?
Years, yeah.
And how long did it take you to get to master, in a sense, where you could ride around the track without scraping?
Yeah, I mean, after now it's been like 5-6 months I've been trying it. So even now, I can go down in a straight line, even in some corners it scrapes a bit, but you can right yourself it's quick enough so you don't fall off. You can feel it under your feet, you can feel that sweet spot, right, when you try it.
Yeah.
So just the feeling of some invisible air rail thing is what it feels like to me.
So riding the hoverboard is very difficult. And besides that, another major problem with this thing is that it needs to be constantly cooled with liquid nitrogen. And when it was as hot as it was outside that day in Spain, we got 10 or 15 minutes on the board before it had to be refilled, a process itself that takes another 10 or 15 minutes. At this point, I gotta wonder why this thing even exists. The Lexus hoverboard isn't actually a product. It's just a special effect in a car commercial. It's part of a series Lexus refers to as Amazing in Motion, which has used lots of flashy props before. Large mechanical puppets dancing through the streets of Madrid, light suits flying through Kuala Lumpur, and even will.i.am.
And my voice is being tracked by a laser.
The difference is that you would never expect to own what is essentially a gigantic Guitar Hero looking level for your car or an LED light suit. You sure as hell would want a hoverboard though. Fortunately, there are companies like Hendo that are actually working on levitation technology with ambitions beyond marketing. But right now, Lexus hasn't brought us any closer to being Marty McFly. Maybe that's just as well, considering the insane limitations of the Lexus hoverboard. You need lots of money to build a track, gallons and gallons of liquid nitrogen on hand, and 5 months of training just to master your balance. So the next time a car company promises you a little bit of Back to the Future style science fiction, you might want to limit your expectations and just tell them this.
Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
Okay, so perhaps it's not alien extraterrestrial technology. And maybe it's going to cost you a couple mil to run the hoverboard in the backyard. But by golly, it's here. And something tells me that the research will continue to go on and on for many, many years. And perhaps 2020 will be the year that we publicly break anti-gravity. No matter how you look at it, it's exciting stuff, folks. The anti-gravity that started, the anti-gravity guests that Art Bell had on from time to time clearly said we were headed this way, noting that anti-gravity effects have also been experimentally demonstrated. The work of Thomas Townsend Brown in 1929 to all of the YouTubers experimenting with it today. And I came across in the research for tonight's show a really cool science project, and it's the last link in the show notes tonight. How you can make your own anti-gravity disc. Very inexpensive, very easy to do. You'll want to click that show note link, go over to Rip'n Rabbit Hole, watch and learn, make your own anti-gravity disc, folks. Start experimenting with the technology yourself, and perhaps we will be talking about you on an upcoming program. You just never know. But the rabbit hole is deep, and there's plenty of room for you there. We did it, folks. We spent another evening together. Thanks for joining me on this fine, cold Sunday in December. I really enjoy hanging out with you, and big shout out to my guest last night, Moneybags. Fantastic show. If you weren't here, you can catch it on demand or rebroadcast over at our website, ripnrabbithole.com, or on YouTube at ripnrabbithole.com. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe bell, as we will continue to bring you fantastic content. And thanks to all of you who joined us and called in last night. We had open lines. We've been experimenting with that, and so far it's been working really, really well. So expect for us to bring open lines into more of our guest shows. Fantastic night last night. We're going to be posting the update for next weekend's schedule starting Thursday and going through Sunday. We're here every night at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your family's friends that Rip'n Rabbit Hole is full of curiosity. Hey, I really do enjoy it. That's why they call me the Rip'n Rabbit. My name's AJ. Wherever you are, I bid you a good evening, a good day, or a good morning, perhaps. Until we meet again, take care of yourself and each other. Good night.
You try to talk to him, you see him disappear. Oh, they call him Mr. Rabbit. Oh, simply Mr. Rabbit. You've never seen such a creature like this, a human body and a rabbit face. Oh, they call him Mr. Rabbit.
Once there was an old man living in an old house down by the lake. Rumor says the man was hunting for rabbits just for fun. Since the day the rabbit disappeared for a while, then came back and cast a spell over the old man. So he looks like a rabbit too now.
You're listening to Ripon Common Sense Radio.
That's right, where we take you well into the midnight hour with our special Art Bell Archives show happening tonight and every night this weekend, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Tune in as we open up the Art Bell Archives and dive into the lost classics of a vocal treasure. We take a look at those stories and we bring them up to date and we share them with you. We ask for your input and your shout-outs, your call-ins, as we go through the most amazing stories ever told. Tune in tonight and every night as we reinvestigate the Art Bell Archives live.
The Art Bell Archive Show, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, RiponCommonSense.com.
Absolute beginners came to Georgetown. They were wearing Harris tweed and pork pie hats. They'd slit your throat and throw you in the gutter. But it's all you can expect from men like that. The buses bound for Niles Bend and Harbor. The ladies wear perfume to scar your nose. And the only way to reach them is to scare them. But of that you know little, I suppose. It's a magical and mystical performance as you perambulate right down the road with your pockets full of stardust and perfection.